Right, welcome to Find the Gaps this week. We are with Matt Wylie from Customer Radar.
G'day, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Very good, very good.
So, actually, in this room that we're in, I met Matt many years ago, many years ago, and we recently caught up in an EO mentoring session, which was really great, and I'm still very grateful because Matt gave me some fantastic insights on software and growth and many other things. So that was very cool. But we're here today to talk about, we're very much in the age of the customer and the ability of a customer to impact businesses on a extraordinary level. I mean, only this week, one of the Kardashians, I'm not sure which one, managed to single-handedly take 1.6 billion US dollars off the value of Snapchat in, I think, one tweet or one Snapchat, which is in the game that you're in, isn't it? Essentially, not necessarily the Kardashians.
No, thank goodness. But I guess the whole voice of the customer has changed completely. It's swung 180 degrees. So my background is in marketing communication, so traditional advertising and marketing, where you had control of the microphone. As a brand or as an advertiser, as a company, you controlled the message, you controlled everything that was out there. With the advent of social media and technology, that swung 180 degrees. So now the customer has a voice, and some of them, like the Kardashian example, have a very, very loud voice, and it can have an enormous impact on not only businesses but people's reputations, all sorts of things, in a positive and negative sense. So we're in a world where it is the age of the customer. And it's if we don't listen to them and take on board what they're saying and what they're thinking, then we're more vulnerable than we've ever been.
So how did you transition from the agency model that you were in into this? Well, I would say back then this was probably quite a niche, whereas now it's not a niche.
That's right. It's becoming a necessity.
So
transition because of a personal desire to change. I've been in the advertising world for a wee while, and really saw technology changing the whole space significantly, and which it has and continues to disrupt the marketing and advertising world. And the traditional agency model is under significant threat. So about 10 years ago, I decided I need to do something different and change the way that I was operating and what I did as a business owner and entrepreneur. And through the work that we'd been doing with a lot of retailers, they had been they were stuck, not really knowing what was going on in their business. They were relying on traditional models of market research or mystery shopping and all those sorts of things, which were slow and expensive and cumbersome and late, outdated. And with the emergence of particularly mobile technology, which is where we started our customer feedback journey in text messaging, actually, you could provide live information to companies, and it was totally revolutionary. They couldn't believe the information that they were getting.
So you mitigate the sort of the gestation time of a grumpy customer in the moment to a grumpy customer telling as many people as possible. You could get it earlier on.
And obviously with the emergence of social media, one grumpy customer now is, so the old stat said that an unhappy customer will tell between 10 to 20 people. I mean, now if they post it on their Facebook page, it could be 1,000 people that are telling straight away, and that can be forwarded and forwarded and forwarded. And I have an example of an EO friend of mine in Sydney that had a bad experience with Tiffany & Co. World famous brand, fantastic experience. The interaction she had didn't live up to the expectation that she had, and so she posted it on Facebook and said, "Really bad experience with Sydney Tiffany & Co. store." The Facebook thread then followed that, people going, "I've had the same experience at that store. I'm not going to shop there again. I'm going to tell my husband not to shop there again," which is the ultimate insult.
Well, he's like, yes.
He's like, thank goodness for that. So he's off the hook. But for a lady to say that and to feel that emotional about the experience that this person had, and somebody even kind of joined the dots saying, if only they knew you had 750 friends on Facebook, would they have treated you differently? Now and that's bad enough, right? Now the kicker to this story is that this person owns a business network of women,
Right.
and so that's her business. And she writes a weekly blog, and she has 20,000 people that read her blog every week.
So she
and guess what she wrote about?
Oh my gosh! And
So
they are all potentially customers of Tiffany.
she's very influential,
Yeah.
and they love her. She's an amazing lady. And so she had one bad experience, and it ended up getting repeated to 20,000 people.
So when we count, so if we play devil's advocate on that, then do you also? I mean, actually, you must have witnessed where people actually manipulate those systems to get brands to respond when they haven't necessarily done anything wrong, because there's this fear of that black mark against their name.
Yeah, absolutely, and particularly with the advent of kind of like the likes of Google reviews and TripAdvisor and that kind of stuff, they can be used as some customers use them as a threat, as a tool to threaten businesses.
Yeah.
And so it's actually creating a bit of mistrust in some of those public.
I've heard a lot about
sites.
the likes of TripAdvisor, and I mean, we had one client who's got a restaurant, and we were saying, well, look, there's this information out there. Well, the problem is this person is well known for doing this.
Yep.
They're in regularly, and we have the same say every day. And it was in that moment you think, God, that is so dangerous, because that person, for whatever their motivation is, they're not just trying to get a free meal. They are actually costing people potentially jobs.
Totally.
Livelihoods. I mean, it's extraordinary. So I mean, I think having the voice is great, but like, how do you guys manage that for the people that you work with, and you work with all sorts of businesses, to actually balance that so you keep trust, but also capture the negatives that a business then can move forward with?
So our process and our methodology means that it's validated feedback.
Right. Okay.
So we know that you're a customer because of the invitation methodology that we use.
Yeah.
And also it's private. So it's up to the company to do what they want with it. So most companies keep it internally. Some will share it externally because they're using it as their own feed of ratings and reviews and that sort of stuff, which is great. And more people are actually moving towards doing that because it is validated and they can prove that these ratings are from genuine customers.
Yeah.
So it actually is a bit of a fight back against the public review sites, which is not validated, and anyone can do it, and your competitor can go on and give you a kicking without you having any right of reply or to be able to validate. What it does is it creates an opportunity to engage directly with anyone, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, and enable you to fix a problem. So we have a lot of examples. So one of our largest supermarket chains is a customer of ours and a user of our platform. And when you go into a supermarket, often you feel like a number, right? Because they serve tens of thousands of people a week. When you give feedback, or if you lay a complaint, there's often people commenting going, I don't know why I'm telling you this, because you probably won't even reply anyway.
Yeah.
But what our system enables them to do, it alerts the owner or manager immediately. And the amount of countless examples of the person giving feedback, walking out the door, and then getting a reply back from the owner or manager saying, can I give you a call and talk to you about your problem? So before they've even left the car park, they've had their issue not only heard, but resolved into their satisfaction.
So does that come down to where most, I'm not sure what the phraseology is most people don't mind being, expectations not necessarily met. What bothers them is the way they're treated post those expectations.
Yeah,
so the fact that person in the car park then may have, for whatever reason, had a bad experience, but the fact it was met and dealt with quickly, they're going to come back tomorrow or the next day.
Yep.
It's when nothing is done, or I mean, I had a recent experience with a certain bank. Banks are banks, and there's a certain process that I know for a fact they're supposed to tell you about, and they didn't, and then they just took money out of my account. So I went onto Facebook and said, well, look, I'm kind of getting a bit frustrated with this because you keep doing this and your process wasn't followed. Anyway, they came back and said, sorry, sent me a message and refunded, it was like $15, whatever. Not a week, she said, which branch was it? I'll tell them, we'll get it fixed. A week later, unfortunately, I lost the card, went through the same process, same thing happened. And I said, look, seriously, I'm gently giving you feedback here. This is not right because you are taking money off people and you've told me your process is this. And then I start to go, well, hold on. If they're doing that to 5 people a day, X branches, that's where these profits come from. Because whether it's incompetence or miscommunication, I had no problem paying the $15. I have a problem with money coming out of my bank account without being educated about it.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. Second time I complained to them directly, not on social media, ignored.
Yeah.
So I'd obviously gone outside their remit of whatever.
Yeah.
So then it frustrates me more because I'm saying, well, hold on, I've given you good feedback. You said you were going to deal with it. You haven't bothered.
Yeah. And
that's worse.
Yeah, it's worse. So if somebody's given you feedback and you've done nothing about it, it's like, don't ask.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not going to do something with it and activate it, and so at the moment we're talking about kind of dissatisfied customers, and there's a whole opportunity with satisfied customers as well. But business, when it comes down to it, business is actually pretty simple when it comes to customer interaction. It's about the risk. So you're spending your hard-earned money on getting goods or services from a company. If you don't get what you want, then you should say something about it. All most people want is to get what they wanted in the first place.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So if you can, it's how you respond in those moments that determine how customer centric and how much you really care.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's what you're telling the customers. Like, I care enough about you and about the business that we do or the relationship we have to fix it to your satisfaction.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. And so we talk to a lot of our clients about the gold in customer feedback is how you react when something goes wrong.
Yeah.
So if you can respond and turn somebody who was dissatisfied and had a bad experience into blowing them away with how you reacted, then when you're asking people, would you recommend us to others, you're going, okay, so I know that if something goes wrong with my friend who I referred to them, if they react in the same way, there's no risk. They're going to get treated with the utmost respect and get what they want. And I had a good friend who owned one of the top opticians in the country, and I talked to him about that scenario, and he said, yeah, actually, when I think about my business and how it grew, they used to have this. It was an internal competition to when there was a complaint, who could get to them the fastest.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so. So he said what would happen is that it was so him and his general manager would have a race who could get there the fastest and then basically do whatever it took to fix the problem. He said, when I look back on my business, and he'd since sold it, and he'd had it for 15 or 20 years, and he'd won all sorts of awards, national awards. He said, when I look back at my best customers, at some point in the relationship something went wrong. Yeah. So there was a service failure at some point. But because they had been so focused on fixing it, not only just to the customer's satisfaction, but exceeding it, they would go and rave to everyone else, going, you've got to go to this place because they're so good.
So have you seen, so there are a couple of factors, obviously social media and social digital connection has exploded and continues to explode. So obviously you'd have been at the forefront of the impact on your business and your clients' businesses. Have you seen a change in culture of business as a whole around the importance of this? Because look, you do see many businesses ask for feedback because it's a tick in a box, versus the people that you work with who actually genuinely care about the customer experience, because they know the lifetime value of a customer is not $12, it's $12 every 2 months or whatever the ratios are. So do you see a natural divide between those who care and those who are going through the motions?
Totally, absolutely. And it's interesting because you walk into most businesses or you look on their website and there'll be a mission statement somewhere. And somewhere in that mission statement will be some commitment to customer excellence and customer service. Yeah. The amount of companies that actually genuinely are committed to that is a lot less, significantly less than what it should be.
And is it changing, or is it?
It is changing because the customers are demanding that it changes, and this whole voice of the customer and social media is forcing companies that aren't customer centric to change.
Yeah.
But what you'll find with some of those companies, they'll say, we tick the feedback box, go into our website, and somewhere down in the menu there's a little "we want your feedback," and it links to an email address to somebody somewhere. Yeah. And so what happens with that? Is it even being monitored? How do they actually measure whether they're doing good, bad, or indifferent with that? So there's no metric behind it. So the old saying, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Truly customer-centric businesses are putting a customer service metric like a Net Promoter Score or a star rating or whatever it is and we don't mind what they do as long as they're measuring something and they're putting it as one of their KPIs at the executive level.
Yeah.
So, and ultimately it should sit with the CEO.
Yeah.
Because businesses only exist for the customer.
Yeah.
So when you look at it from that point of view, going, the fact that you don't have a metric on how well you're delivering on your customers is a bit crazy.
Yeah.
You would never consider not doing your annual accounts or your monthly accounts.
Yeah.
So why do you not have a metric to see how well you're doing delivering on what your customer wants?
And so when it comes down to it, what's the pattern you're seeing? Who is owning? You talk about it's ultimately responsible as CEO and sort of the head of the business, no matter what size of the business. Yeah. What trends are you seeing about who is taking responsibility of the customer journey? I mean, you trawl through LinkedIn and, everyone's now got a title that no one actually really understands. But is there a trend of people now beyond the CEO that are focused on the customer journey, good, bad, or indifferent, it's their sole role, and are they becoming your customers, or are you still working with owners? How are you seeing that change? Because obviously if there's a shift in the market, the businesses then have to respond, and that might be new talent, new skills, new department.
Yeah, it depends on the business and often the leadership, the senior leadership. So we've noticed a trend that if the senior leaders in the business aren't customer-centric and aren't engaged in the customer experience as part of what makes them different or unique, then measuring customer satisfaction won't stick. Yeah. Because they're ticking a box. Yeah. It's those companies that are genuinely talking about the customer all day, every day in their conversations when they're having an executive team meeting. The customer is part of the conversation. It's not just about we're creating this efficiency or changing this product because we think it should be this, like our customers want this, or we need to improve our service because our customers are telling us that this is the opportunity for us to grow.
I mean, it almost seems a bit farcical. I mean, everything you're talking about, and not to undermine it, seems obvious. And everything you're talking about is about increased profits, increased stability, increased growth, increased rate. That's all positive.
The outcome is all of those things.
They're all positive outcomes. There's very little negative. It's only negative when you get it wrong.
Yeah.
If you don't do anything.
If you don't do anything about it. Correct. Yeah.
So they're doing something about it. I think that's really interesting in that it's easy to get information. It's not so easy to necessarily do something about it. It's like all aspects of business. Every business is full of opportunity, time, resource, all the usual stuff comes up. Yeah. So how do you take a client through that journey and saying, well, now you've got the data, the most critical thing is to do something about it. And how does that work? And because there's so much opportunity in there, it might be overwhelming to know what to then do.
Yeah, and I think that's where that's what Customer Radar does in the world of the voice of the customer and customer feedback. So essentially we took a view that you need to empower the right people in the business. So the traditional model of surveying and research and engaging customers is that it sits at head office with a team of customer insights people. They figure out what the hell the customers are saying, what the trends are, and then they try and get it down into the business. We flipped the whole model on its head where this was built for, in a retail environment, the store manager. Yeah. Because the store manager and the staff, the feedback is about them.
Just the cold face.
Yeah. So they're the ones that are dealing with the customer. So they're the ones that should have access to it. Yes, head office can see it and regional managers and all that, all the people that want to and need to see it. But actually, if you're running a store and customers are giving feedback, you need to know because you can actually be really responsive if you know what's going on. So it's actually about empowering the right people within an organisation with the right data at the right time.
So almost at that executive level, the focus on the customer-centric part of the business, or if by fundamentally you are customer-centric, it doesn't mean that the CEO has to take the call. No. The CEO has to make sure the ecosystem can respond to it quickly, and that like you say, within 5 minutes it's solved. It doesn't have to be 3 weeks, an email or this or that or the other.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to get down to that granular level. Although in saying that, we do have some CEOs that get alerted to the highest level complaints and reserve the right, if it's really bad, and sometimes it is, to be able to contact the customer directly. So you imagine if you'd gone into a store and something really bad had happened, somebody was just really rude or something, had happened, and you're going, this is just really terrible. Yeah. To get a reply from the CEO of the company saying, hey, look, I'm the CEO. Would you mind if I gave you a call to talk about it?
But isn't that a good thing as well? It's bad that high, the level 5 or whatever comes through. But isn't that also grounding for a CEO? Because you often hear that the heads of businesses, or certainly significant size businesses, can become quite disconnected to the person that walks into a store, buys the product, that then creates whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had one example of a CEO that after they piloted Customer Radar, he said, "You've just given me my weekends back."
Really?
So because he would spend his weekends going around all the stores to try and see what was going on.
So he was doing mystery shopping himself?
Yeah, doing his own mystery shopping because he didn't have a sense of what was going on. And he said this gave him a tool, a transparent tool. He knew it was the genuine customer's voice, so he couldn't argue. So it changed the conversation when he went into the store. He could start the conversation by saying, "Hey, let's look at what your customers are saying about your business or your store, irrespective of where sales were going up and down." He started with, are you delivering on what your customer wants first?
Yeah.
So it actually changed the whole way that he was able to manage the business. And his reporting and his view was more at a trend level, a top line level, rather than what's happening down at the store level.
Yeah.
But it's giving you that transparency right through the organisation so that he can hold a store manager accountable if they haven't replied to a customer complaint. But he can equally see, or she can equally see, that the trends across the business are that there's an issue with the product, and that's why customers are complaining. And it's not something that the stores can do about it. It's an operational thing. It's a product development thing.
So is this when you look at it like from that point of view, is this now this process and what you offer specifically and the demands from your clients becoming a competitive advantage?
Yeah, it is. And I think as much of a competitive advantage will be a competitive disadvantage if you don't have something.
Yeah.
So I think...
so what did they say? Any strategy, you should be able to reverse it. One should be able to go one way and the other. So if you don't have it, it's as bad as...
Yeah. So my personal belief is that we're moving to a world where every customer every day should be able to give you live feedback on their experience. Yeah. And you've got businesses like Uber that have really helped to just normalise the whole process of it's just short and sharp. So we enable any business to be that short and sharp with their feedback. Yeah. When a customer goes in store now or interacts with any business, and they go, if they can't give you feedback, they're kind of going, what? So it's kind of changing the whole model where you're going, you're not very customer centric if you are not open to hearing my voice. Yeah. So so you're then kind of exposed to whatever the customer says and does online. Yeah. You're kind of asking for it.
And I mean, and I've experienced literally a couple of times, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, where people find themselves not doing anything because they fear the response, whether it's good or bad. They'd rather not know. And I mean, I remember a long, long time ago, it was one of the senior people in Vodafone, which is, there's some irony in based on some of our recent experiences with Vodafone. But he said it's better to know what people are saying than not.
Yeah.
Because then you can do something about it. And I'll never forget that. I mean, many, many, many years ago, he said, if we know what they're saying, we can react to it. And we had a couple of people, and I remember we were talking to them, and she said, I've got this feeling that no one likes us. I said, oh, okay, well, no, fair enough. Where's that come from? Well, what do you mean? I said, well, what, have you got complaint? No. Well, do you think we should ask them?
Yeah.
And you know what? What was fascinating, and we did it the old school way, just an email, it was 15, 20 people. No one had a complaint. And any of the elements of feedback were, we'd really like an expanded range here, or we'd like to know about this quicker. They were all positive things. They were all operationally good. And another client who they didn't have the customer at the center of their experience. And I actually genuinely don't know why. But early on, I identified that the reason they were having all these downstream effects was because of their attitude towards the customer. Yeah. And we've been working on that from a brand point of view for a couple of years, 2 years. And we met after Christmas, and I said, where are we at? And he said, well, customers are happy. And I'm like, okay. But what we found was that the customers were happy. Then when they had to invoice them, the invoices got paid. There was just this, and even the client was, you could see him physically less stressed. And it's a small business, 5, 6 people. And it was really interesting to me to see the journey he had gone on and the level of respect he had then gained for the customer. And, the downstream effect is now that they're getting more inquiry than they can cope with because their global reputation has now changed.
Yeah.
And I put it back to the fact we said, well, hold on, your attitude towards this customer sucks.
Yeah.
I know if you change this, something will happen. The stuff, everything else is just, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because if that doesn't change, nothing else will change.
Well, like I said, there's often a fear at the start that if we ask our customers to give feedback, they're all going to complain. And so what I say, there's a couple of things. You go, well, okay, if you've already got a good business or even a reasonable business, that would suggest that there's a whole bunch of your customers that actually are happy. So they're not all
just
satisfied.
take the win.
Yeah. And so you've got a business that's doing okay. There's always going to be opportunities for improvement. So, but if you do have a good business and you find out that most of your customers aren't happy, you go, wow, what an awesome opportunity that is.
Yeah.
Because you're going, if you've got a reasonable business, there's a whole bunch of people that are really unhappy. They're telling you why, and if you fix that, then I'll come back more often and buy more from you.
Yeah.
You're going, all right, what a launching pad that is.
So do you think some of this is I mean, we've been reading, Karen and I have been reading the Bill Bishop book, The New Factory Thinker. Actually, the book that was recommended when you and I did some work together at the workshop. Amazing book. Boy, that opens your eye up. Do you think there's there needs to be a mindset shift in some of this stuff? Are people still kind of going, well, I mean, we hear it a lot, and things are going well, so that's okay. But what if they were going 5% better?
Yeah, totally.
And we've had an example last week from a client, and we were really a lot of depth, and they have a lot of leads coming through per month in the millions of dollars, and I just saw a very simple ratio that if we changed the conversion from 17% to 20%, million extra dollars per annum.
Yeah, wow.
And when we look at the ratios of what actually had to be done to create that $1 million, it was laughable. Mm-hmm. And what was fascinating was the attitude towards the focus on that aspect. It was a conversion process, yada, yada, yada. But I'm like, $1 million for very little more, a very little amount of extra work is extraordinary. And surely the work you're doing is identifying those huge wins.
Yep. And look, so we talked about the dissatisfied customers and the opportunities there. So we got 4.5 million pieces of feedback in our system. 5% of them are complaints or low ratings. So as a ratio, you go 1 in 20 customers that get feedback complain.
That's extraordinary.
People get hung up on that. So the opportunity is the 95%. Also going, so they're telling you, love you, and often when you phrase the question right, what did you like, what could you improve? You get people that will give you 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5, whatever your ratio is, and say, love this, but if you could do this, would be even better.
Which it becomes product development, becomes market research, becomes your next big thing.
Yep. If you get people saying, you know what, really love you guys and what you offer, but actually if you're going to open it, till 10 o'clock at night, that would be even better. And you go, okay, if there's one customer saying that, you wouldn't do anything about it. If there was a trend of people going, if you're open later, I would be able to come back more often because it's after work, then you go, wow, that's gold. So your loyal customers are telling you how we want to spend more money with you.
How can we spend more money with you? And we had an example the other day about buying. We saw something about buying signals. There was an opportunity in one of the clients' businesses, and we were talking about values and culture, and basically the client was trying to hand them cash. I need to make this decision now. I want to book now, and the person plugged in psychologically into the system and said, "We can't help you." And then we looked at the values and went, well, no, one of the values is about helping you. So I'm going, well, this is not about the sale here. This is about our understanding of how you talk to the customer. And Ryan going, well, maybe I can't solve it now, but give me an hour. Or let me find a way to solve it. And we kind of looked at that and thought, gosh, that one comment, because they stayed within the box or whatever, stayed within their lane, probably potentially cost that client $4,000 to $5,000. Which is absolutely fascinating. So a lot of these learnings then start to flood into culture, training, attitude, hiring. You're able to actually make a lot of really strong decisions about what the future looks like from this process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which will also change as you grow and evolve and customer sophistication
Because you touched on an interesting thing. You're looking for an opportunity, so thinking outside the box. You can train people in your organisation to think exactly like this. This is what we do, and every business is driven by a process. But part of that process and part of that training can be look for opportunities to go further for your customer. So it might be that, for example, in a particular retail store, we don't do do service outside the counter. Depending on what it is, and you see a mum turn up with a pushchair, and she's overloaded. She just bought a whole lot of stuff. So the rules say we don't serve outside the counter. You think if you then stepped outside of the counter and said, "Let me help you carry your bags to your car," that what's she going to say about that experience?
It's disproportionate, isn't it?
And it's giving people permission to actually wow customers. And the other part of that too is going actually having a process to acknowledge and reward those people. So catch people doing things good and creating that X factor kind of experience.
And that plays into, depending what your belief systems are, that whole sense of gratitude. Like if you can give in that moment, the wave of gratitude goes not only from the employee, the team member, to that guest or customer, or whatever, but also it sets culture. It creates from every level. And so break down. You've talked a lot about retail, and that's obviously the coal phase. What percentage of retail versus B2B do you do? What are the trends that you see?
What are the trends? So in terms of the trends from a customer perspective,
who's putting the energy into that customer experience? So is it more retail, or is it?
So retail is the core of has been the traditional core of our customer base, but we also do a lot of work in the automotive space with a lot of major brands, doing more and more in the B2B space. And it's interesting. There's a common trend across everything, which we talked about before. It's about whether the business leaders are customer centric, and they want to know. And so, irrespective of industry or size or product offering, if they don't want to know, then that's it.
So even for you need the right customer for your tool to be effective.
We had an aha moment a couple of years ago when we felt like we were banging our heads against a brick wall with a whole bunch of companies that we were talking to and going, how come they're not engaging? How come they're not wanting to get customer feedback? And we realised actually they're not customer centric businesses. So we have a tool that will help them become more customer centric and put the voice of the customer right in their business, and they can use it to drive change. But actually, if they're not customer centric in the first place, they're not going to use the tool. And so our job, we figured, is not to convince them to become customer centric, because that's actually a hard place to push somebody.
You can't convince someone who doesn't want to be convinced.
If you're not already customer centric, then and you've been running the business for 20 years, you're not going to change.
But they will have a competitor
that will become customer centric.
Who will become customer centric, and then they create the market opportunity.
So it comes back to the leaders in the business and how open they are, and you get there's some exceptionally customer centric leaders, and they talk about the customer in every conversation that they have, and those that are driven by the operations or the finances because their background is in accounting, or so often it depends on the background of the senior leaders in the organisation.
So it sounds like what your experience is that the way we run business, well, we all know the way we run businesses is changing fundamentally. In that you see examples of businesses run by spreadsheets aren't necessarily doing so well anymore. Whereas actually, though, and I want to be careful about my phraseology, but the not socially led businesses, because that's probably not quite what we're talking about, but actually the person, the owner or the senior people, whoever it is, understanding that they're still dealing with people like themselves. They should be dealing with themselves. I mean, I remember many moons ago, we used to do a lot of work, marketing to architects. We always knew that architects were incredibly busy, and so many products, they're getting hammered. But one thing I thought about, we often talked about them as if they were something different as a human being, and I was like, well, an architect is a sailor, a dad, a brother, a footballer, a runner. can we not talk to them about them as a human being and the fact that their professional life is their professional life, but underneath they are a human being? And, do you see a change in people understanding they're actually dealing with humans?
Yeah.
They're not a tick box or a user. And
but it's something that we've always kind of believed, going back to the marketing days. I mean, the phrase business to business is actually a ridiculous phrase, because a business doesn't buy from a business.
Yeah.
So it's a person buying from another person who happens to be in a business.
Yeah.
So, once you start thinking like that, exactly what you said. It's like, they're all those things, but it's still a person. People buy on emotions and on connections and relationships and all those sorts of things. So I think, the world that we're in now with technology and there's more connectivity and more opportunity to engage with people, although sometimes we're doing it more digitally than in person. Yeah. So ironically, that's kind of changing that a bit.
But you're sort of bridging the gap between the two, because essentially you are responding to actual physical encounters. Well, a certain amount of the time, certainly like in retail. I mean, retail's changing hugely. We're going very much from you go to a store to get what you want to, it seems that stores are experiences now, because we've got the Amazons and, you've got so many ways to buy, in that actually the feedback you're getting is about those bump moments, those humans interacting with humans, and that humans are flawed and brilliant and all of those things.
But it's even not just the human interactions, because it's those moments of truth. And so we track a lot of online businesses as well, and particularly if you're in retail, you've got bricks and mortar, and you've got online.
Yeah.
Tracking those experiences, and are they equal?
Yeah.
And one of the trends we see is that at the moment the online stuff is falling behind. It's lagging behind the bricks and mortar.
In what sense?
In just the whole experience. So it's not quite. So the customer satisfaction scores aren't in line with the face-to-face.
So how do you respond to that? What's your experience and what that's saying? Is it?
So a lot of it is around kind of the processes behind buying online.
Okay. And so it's a technical conversion-led.
Yeah, and there's things like there's also expectations are changing. So you've got the likes of Amazon; they're getting really active. Yeah. And they're saying they might promise 4 to 5 hours delivery, but you can buy something locally and it'll take you a week to get delivered online. So that's not acceptable anymore.
Yeah.
So and I had that experience with somebody just before Christmas trying to buy something, and I did it because I thought I'll buy it online. It's convenient and easy. It's easy. There's literally a store 500 metres away from where we're sitting right now, where I could have gone to and bought it and probably picked it up.
Yeah.
It took a week for it to get delivered to me.
Wow.
And so again, that's just not good enough.
I mean, you talk about Amazon. The one thing that fascinates me, and I'm sure. Well, I mean, I don't know statistically, but I really like the fact that whenever I buy something on Amazon Books, you look at the date and go, oh gosh, that's a month away, but I'm saving money, and especially with books, because they are expensive. Don't want to help close bookshops, but unfortunately the realities. But every time it still tickles me pink that they always turn up early. And I'm fascinated by that technology, because I didn't mind waiting a month. Yeah. And I know now 9 out of 10 times they turn up 6 or 7 days earlier, and it still goes, you've nailed it every time, because my expectations are so far out. Yeah. They can over-deliver every time. Yeah. And it's that simple psychology.
But it's managing your expectations, and actually that's one of the key trends we see out of all the feedback we get at every interaction. Communication is an underlying issue for dissatisfaction, because you didn't manage my expectations. So whether that was in the retail store about whether you had what I wanted, whether it was online delivery and the speed of delivery, if it's an automotive, I was getting my car serviced and you didn't ring me to tell me that it was going to be another hour, and I turned up and I've had to wait an hour sitting around. Yeah. So it's actually a continuous theme, but that's because it's people dealing with people.
And something you're talking about, the hour thing, the timing thing, that's got to be a critical part of your business, is that actually expediency is a huge part of the success or failure of the work you do with clients, in that, we're all in inverted commas time poor, which I would challenge sometimes. We're maybe time inefficient. So a lot of what you're talking about is the efficiencies of time, like if someone can get a text or something and go, well, it's running behind, great, I'm saving myself now.
Yep.
It's way better to have, beyond just about to leave and get it than be sat there for an hour.
Totally. Yeah. And
so they're giving them the time back. It's the old Uber thing. They're giving people time back.
Totally, absolutely. And something like that, you go, it's a simple business process.
Yeah.
And often these companies already have the capability, but they're not using it.
Yeah.
And the cost to send that text is probably 15 to 20 cents, right?
Yeah.
So, but the reputational damage is immense.
Yeah.
So that customer might go away fuming that they've wasted an hour when they could have been doing something else, and they may not come back again. And maybe they'll go and tell their friends about, or they'll go and post while they're sitting in the waiting room fuming on Facebook, going, I'm sitting here at this company and it's going to take an hour. I'm never coming back here again. Don't ever do business with them.
So based on those statistics, that 5% of those, was it 4.5 million pieces of data, are there, God, I'm just losing track of what I'm thinking. You've given me so much information. Forget it, it'll come to me. I'll stop thinking about it. Sure. But it was interesting, the positive aspect of it.
There was something, there's something I was going to pick up on that you had said earlier, which was around the data and using leading indicators or lagging indicators in data.
Yeah.
So, and in customers. So we all, as I mentioned before, we all would never think of not doing our monthly accounts, right?
There's the odd one or two that
some but we don't talk about that. IRD will have chats to them at some point. But it's about that's knowing what's happened, right? Yep. But there's no indication whatsoever about what's coming up.
Yeah.
So do you have the right leading indicators in your business? And we had this fantastic example a few years ago where it was in a franchise group. This was the most profitable store by a long way, because they were actually in a monopoly situation where people had to use them. It was a cafe chain, and this store was held up as the leading light of success because they were streets ahead, more profitable than everyone else. When they started to run customer radar and started getting customer feedback, they actually were at the bottom end of the customer satisfaction scale. So it made the business go, oh, hang on, what's going on here? So because they were in a monopoly situation, they'd become complacent and lazy because they didn't need to try hard. So people would come into them anyway. They had to because there was no other choice. And they were going, right, so if they're making that much money and they're providing a really poor customer experience, what could they do?
Yeah.
So they actually flipped their thinking around, going, actually, they need a whole lot of help. And we need to get in there and find out what's going on.
But that shows a strong leadership, isn't it? Is actually, because most people, some people would go, well, that's fine. Why spend more time and money when it's not broken? It's like, well, it is broken, but you can dominate rather than...
But you can't see it. They couldn't see it because profit was their only measure of success. And they're ticking operational boxes and things, but chuck the customer in there and then you go, oh, hang on, they're actually failing. And because they were a monopoly business, they were actually a location where a lot of people were being forced to trial the brand.
Yeah.
And forced because they weren't having a great experience. And you're going, so actually the reputational damage they're doing is potentially significant.
Yeah.
So the flow-on effect for that business could be far greater than what they can even measure. Flip that around and go, right, they became so much more profitable, providing a great customer experience. People are trialling the brand and then going out and next time they're in a shopping mall or somewhere else where that brand is.
So they make even more ground on anyone who wants to come in.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's an interesting thing because in this country, there are still many monopolies and duopolies. And, we've just moved office and let's say some telecommunication services are consistently challenging, let's say.
Yep.
And but what fascinates me, and we talked about it a little bit, in that the level of complacency when you are in a monopoly, I find it fascinating because you have the same experience. But then we started talking about, well, imagine working in an environment where a monopoly is on the wrong side of the ledger, where they go, well, we don't need to do anymore. Yeah. But then you think, well, culturally that must be awful because you're working in an environment where no one really gives a shit.
Yeah.
And we're still winning, in inverted commas.
We look at, and those are the industries that as soon as disruption comes, they get smashed.
Yeah.
So you look at Sky, right now.
Well, I was reading about that yesterday.
Yeah.
Their price changes and everything. I mean,
And I'm still a Sky customer because I'm a diehard sports fan, and
I am on the fringes of staying or going. Although the first thing when I saw the article the other day, I sent it to my wife, going, "We can get more for less now.
Yep.
Now they're under,
Totally.
which is." But I think it's a good strategy. I think it's maybe 3 or 4 years too late because people are so unhappy with the brand.
Yeah.
People are going, "Come on, Amazon, let's just see how this."
Yep, they're now tarnished, so people are going, now I'm actively looking, and it's a regular conversation at barbecues and things about who's dumped Sky and who's got it. So literally in my street, we're good friends with the neighbours. I'm the only one with Sky. Wow. So with sports,
so they all point in aghast at you?
No, they want me to keep it.
Yeah,
they all come to my place so they can watch it. But they've lost probably 4 customers in the street, and so.
An average cost of $70, $80 a week, a month maybe.
Yeah. One mug left, and that's me. But now we're looking at the disruption. You're going, well, we've got Netflix, and that costs us $10 a month for just all you can eat, and these other services, and Sky's so much more expensive. As soon as the sport is their gold. But as soon as you've got the major sports, and it's happening internationally, own their own broadcast rights and digitally streaming it, they're stuffed, and we will switch really quickly because of the feeling that we have towards them about you've been in a monopoly so long, and I feel like it hasn't been fair.
Yeah.
So, and it comes back to what we talked about earlier. It's about the risk in the relationship. I feel like I'm carrying all the risk, so I feel like I'm paying more than I should for the service that I'm getting.
And I think that the one thing, loyalty was the word that I had on my mind before. So I think the one thing, in that example with Sky is that nearly every complaint I've ever seen on the Facebook, etc., is about a new offer. Mm-hmm. I've been with you for 10 or 15 years and I can't get hold of the offer. The thing I saw in the article yesterday, the day before, was that yes, this will be open to current customers. Now that's a major shift, but we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars worth of unhappy customers over many years because they fundamentally, I think, potentially were arrogant and going, well, we don't need to play nice.
Yeah.
Whereas I think an observation would be the likes of Netflix are maybe a little bit more collaborative and going, well, we know that someone might have 4 different streaming services. Yeah. We may be one of 4, but that's okay because we'll be our thing in the one of 4. We won't be stuck.
Yeah.
And I think that that idea of loyalty, and they've underestimated people's loyalty, and it wasn't necessarily loyalty because they didn't have a choice. Yeah. Whereas now people are using loyalty as the kicker to say, well, why are they more important than me? And because it's a deal. So I guess the point I wanted to ask you about before was you must have a great understanding of what loyalty looks like from a customer. And I don't mean just they come back now and again. But you talk about understanding how we all have habits and we all have all these things that we're conscious of and some we're not conscious of. But you must have this really great insight into how companies can really keep customers for a long time, because we're talking about business. Yep. This is not
totally,
and it's not all negative. Business isn't all bad, but I know this. We've bought the same toothpaste for the last God knows how. So are we loyal or are we in a habit? Or it's an interesting space.
Yeah, well, they've been consistent. They've provided you with a product that is risk-free. Yeah. So they haven't changed it, and they haven't put in a new flavour or a new variant that you've gone, I don't like that. I might try something else. Yeah. The whole loyalty thing is a whole interesting topic in itself. You get all these companies that have loyalty programs and rewards points and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. There is a whole fear around, and I remember speaking to the head of a large retailer who had a very well-known loyalty program. Yeah. It was costing them $5 million a year to run the loyalty program, and it was more the fear of switching it off in the unknown than what would happen. Would they lose all these customers? Are they genuinely getting $5 million worth of value? They didn't know.
It's an expensive hobby.
It's a really expensive. But when it comes down to it, you're going, actually, a great customer experience is more of a loyalty driver than getting a reward point. Because you can give me a reward point if I had a bad experience and I'm not coming back anyway.
No.
And you look at some environments like like cafes, for example, it's a bit of a nil-sum game. Most of them have a card of some point.
Yeah.
So buy 5 get the 6th free, or buy 9 get the 10th free. There's something there, right, with all of them. Doesn't change my behaviour.
No.
It's probably more convenience and whether I like the coffee. And the last time I went there, I had a great experience. If I've had a terrible experience, it doesn't really matter what their loyalty program is or does. I'll go somewhere else because it's not what I want. It's I'm carrying all the risk because if I go and spend my money, I might get a rubbish coffee.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say. I mean, and I think about it recently, and there are certain stores I've been in, and I feel that when you're at that interaction and a checkout, I feel like I'm being asked 9 or 10 questions. Who served you? Are you a loyalty member? What's your phone number? And like I feel like I get why they're doing it. I mean, like you do. You go, okay, I understand, and I'm curious about the process, and I see why you're mining data and stuff like that. But then I think, well, now you're starting to irritate me because you're slowing me down. I just want to give you the money. You either want the money or you don't. Yeah. And it's nice now and then again when I save $5 or whatever. That's cool. But I feel there are so many companies now that maybe aren't getting that mix right in that they are asking too much of me in that moment. Yeah. And therefore, and there's one particular brand I use a lot for the gear I use to race and train. And for years now I've been going there and they've got all this data on me. They see how frequently I buy. I spend quite a lot. And I'm pretty loyal because the product really works for me. And it has for years. But then I'm still treated exactly the same every time I come into store as a new customer, and it's very methodical. And I actually gave them this feedback and said, well, it's really interesting to me, and obviously I have knowledge bias in that I'm kind of trying to work it out. But I think there's a trick here because you're treating me like you don't know me, but you can see my level of loyalty to your brand is probably in the thousands now, let's say, quite heavily. So that disconnect is interesting to me in that it feels that maybe some brands are doing this bit but haven't connected it to this bit over here. And you must experience that a huge amount.
Yeah, absolutely. See it all the time, but actually I had a very personal experience on the same sort of thing where we had a client that was running our program and happened to have one of their stores near us, and it was a convenience store. It was actually a gas station. Oh, yeah. And they had a convenience store. We go and buy all our milk and bread because it's so close to our house. I gave feedback to them saying that you treat me like you don't even recognise me, and I'll go in there. I'm your best milk buyer. And I'll go in there, 4 or 5 times a week because at that stage we had young kids and they were drinking it like it was going out of fashion, and they would never even acknowledge you, or even even pretend that you were a regular customer.
So the fact you've got a card in your pocket and you're on a database doesn't reflect in the customer experience.
Well, that wasn't a loyalty program; it was just a frequent customer. So they didn't even make the effort to get to know regular customers. And actually, once they'd run the program, it was a trend that came out of that location from a lot of customers saying that there wasn't that personal connection. They weren't very friendly and helpful. And so as a result, they actually changed the staff. They changed the manager of that station.
Do you feel bad?
No, not at all, because the service is fantastic now. So it's really good.
Wow.
So
that's a huge impact.
They had acknowledged. So in that case, it wouldn't have mattered whether they have a loyalty program or not.
It was the experience.
Yeah, it's the experience. And so now we go there, and we still go there and have for quite a long time, but it's a totally different experience. And now probably the point is I won't go somewhere else. So there's other options that are probably 50 metres down the road, which I could go to. If they continued with that bad experience, I probably would have walked the extra distance and would have been doing that for 8 years now. Yeah. But instead they have...
So they've enhanced your loyalty, haven't they? Because they've responded to your need. Yep. And it's a better experience. So they've actually hit 2 things there really well.
Yeah. And the funny thing about it is so they don't give me points because they don't have a points program. They just recognise me and say hi. They don't even necessarily know my name, but they just say hi and acknowledge me and make me feel welcome. Yeah. So, and it's one of the interesting trends that we see. So we do some analysis of all the comments and stuff that come in. How often if you do a word cloud, which is just a frequency graph of most commonly used words, when you ask people what could be improved, how frequently the word smile trends.
Really?
Yeah. And it's comments around...
Well, we're humans, aren't we?
Yeah, it's around, a smile, it'd be nice if you smiled, or a smile doesn't cost anything. Yeah. And that's line 1 of the 101 of customer service. Yeah. It's like smile and greet me. Yeah. But it actually shows that some of this stuff is really basic. do that really well. Just smile and make me feel welcome.
Well, isn't it all basic? Like, we are humans. We're fundamentally. I mean, I've just thought of a great thing. So I live up north, and the best place to get my traffic, because of the traffic so bad, is a certain green petrol station. And I've been obviously going there maybe a couple of years now, and I can't be bothered to have loyalty cards. I just can't be bothered. I don't mind missing out on a free whatever, because I just don't want to carry the card. And I know there's digital versions there. And interestingly, a few weeks back, about 6-8 months ago, she's like, "Hey, Grant," because they need your name for the copy. She said, "Morning, Grant. Hey," before I've even got through the door. And then it was, "Tea this morning?" "Yeah, great." And then a few weeks back, she said, "You don't have a coffee card." I said, "No, it's all right. Don't worry about it. It's not a problem." She goes, "It's about time you get a free one." And she just offered me. And I just was blown away. I went,
"Yeah,
oh my gosh." I didn't expect it. I didn't want it. I just didn't want a card in my pocket.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get that out of my mind for hours after that, because I thought, she has just delivered 10x on the whole experience. And then I thought, oh God, I wonder if she'd get into trouble for giving that, and I'd like to think not, but I just thought that blew my mind.
So that creates loyalty and raving fans. So now we're sitting here talking about it.
But it was that one person for me. She's the one person that really gives. Yeah. And she's very sweet, and she treats everyone really well. Yeah. And it's just a petrol station. Yeah. But that one was a real kicker for me to say, well, you deserve one. Yeah. Because she asks me every time, "Have you got a card?" She doesn't remember whether I've got one or not, and I'm like, "No, it's fine." It's fine. Yeah. But I thought that was amazing.
Isn't it interesting though? Because it points to hiring right.
Yes.
So hire the right type of people with the right personalities. There's people that love people and people interaction. Yeah. You can tell the difference between those people and those that actually are just there for the job and earning the money, and they're just doing their time, and they don't engage with you. And you can imagine if you could actually hire, all those types.
You get the recipe, don't you?
Absolutely. But that's what creates loyalty, and we all do it. You go to stores where there's someone in there that's just fantastic at what they do, and you'll go there just to engage with that person. You go, that's actually more valuable than the loyalty points you give me, because if I have a bad experience with your loyalty, or if you've given me loyalty points, I'll walk off somewhere else. Yeah. But that personal interaction is a more powerful pull than all of that stuff.
So, I mean, the summary of that is really that we can't forget that we're all in the people business. Yeah. You're not in the technology business, that's your tool, but you are in the people business. Yeah. All of your customers are in the people business. And I think sometimes we're forgetting that. We're obsessed with technology and tools that we're all in the people business when it comes down to it. And if the one big thing all of your customers can do is get their team to smile, there's nothing revolutionary about that, but it's a dying art.
But it's actually just a reminder that that's the important stuff. Yeah. And sometimes you need to be reminded of that, because you think actually we've got a 20-page training manual and all these are the things and the processes and things, and I've got to wear my name badge and things. But actually, what's important to the customer is smile and be helpful and friendly. And you do those things, and you're already, halfway there.
So one final thing before we wrap up. Where do you see all this going? I mean, obviously, this is your business. People is your business, and you've gone. You're in the SaaS space. Yes. Where do you see loyalty, customer retention going? What do you think is on the horizon?
Well, I think the whole voice of the customer is continuing to grow and is becoming more important. And as we said, it's being fueled by things like social media, by reviews, so it's growing from the perspective that companies need to take ownership of it. Yes, they need to monitor social media and do all those sorts of things, but if they're not taking control of their own or not connecting with the voice of the customer, they're really leaving themselves open. And as I said, there's an expectation from a customer going, if you care about me, you want to know my opinion and what I have to say. Yeah. So, I think there's a growing need for it. It's not going customers. The voice of the customer isn't going away in a hurry. It will evolve and adapt about how companies use it, how customers use it. But it's a really exciting space to be in, particularly with technology and the emergence of a whole lot of other things like machine learning and artificial intelligence. What we can do with the data now and the insights that we can extract and pull from it. really exciting, to the point where we only feel like we're scratching the surface. Which is the cool bit. We're kind of 8 years old in this business, and
you still feel fresh.
Yeah, I feel like we're just barely at the start line. So,
fantastic.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Well, thanks so much. I think there are takeaways for every business in there, in just those little nuggets of doing the simple stuff, and also not fearing asking the question. So, the voice of the customer, it's critical.
Absolutely.
So thanks for your time, Matt, and I hope everyone gets a few little nuggets out of that. I mean, you've spent 8 years learning it, so you may as well do something about it.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no, thank you.